Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the PT on Ice Daily Show. It is Fitness Athlete Friday, the best day of the week here on the PT on Ice Daily Show podcast. I am your host today, Dr. Zach Long, lead faculty for the Clinical Management of the Fitness Athlete Live and Advanced Concepts course. And today we're going to talk about kind of what are some of the important variables we look at when analyzing CrossFit programming. So this was actually a question that was asked at the CMFA Live course that I did in Victor, New York back in, I think it was in December. It was asked by one of the coaches that actually attended, a coach and physical therapist that were in the same box, attended together, and I thought this was a great question for us to talk about live on the podcast, to give you some insights into the different variables that are really important for us to be paying attention to when we're looking at a gym and their programming and maybe why those individuals are coming in to see us for treatment. So before we dive into that, a couple upcoming courses that we have. I'm teaching in Houston. I'm about to catch a flight right after this podcast this weekend, so February 1 and 2 in Houston. And then Mitch has two courses coming up really shortly. He'll be in Vancouver, February 15th and 16th, and then Fort Collins, Colorado, March 14th and 15th. So check out those two courses. Also in March, on March 2nd, our Clinical Management of the Fitness Athlete Essential Foundations course starts up again. This course is 100% online for 8 weeks. That course always sells out. So we're sitting here at the very end of January. So there's only going to be a couple spots left at this point. So if you've been thinking about pulling the trigger on that course, go ahead and do it. Mitch and Allen teach that course, and it is a phenomenal course. Whether you want to treat CrossFit athletes or you want to treat general population, that is one of those courses that I think everybody needs to take. They have done a phenomenal job building that one out. So let's dive into these top CrossFit programming mistakes that I see when I'm analyzing the program of individual gyms. These are things that quite often we'll hear CrossFit headquarters recommend against doing, or their general policies are a little bit different. So here we go. We got 10 different things here. Number one, and this is maybe the most important one to me, and that is the amount of volume that the gym programs in that hour-long class is so much that the coaches then don't have any time to actually coach the movements. So you're going in and you're doing a 10 to 15 minute warm up, and then they have 20 minutes worth of strength or skill work programmed, and then a really long metabolic conditioning workout. So maybe a 20-minute Metcon. So we have 20 minutes of strength, 20 minutes Metcon, 15-minute warm up. We're at 55 minutes in that hour-long session. So we only have 5 more minutes of play here, and in that 5 minutes, we have athletes running around, grabbing equipment, getting stuff set up, so the coach literally does not have time to sit there and break down the points of performance of that movement. What I like to see is that we have 15 or 20 extra minutes in that schedule of the class, so that the coach can sit there and say, all right, guys, today we're going through the deadlift as part of our strength workout. Here are the key points of performance that we want to see with the deadlift. We have a hip width stance. We've used a hip hinge pattern here, brace neutral spine as we come off the ground, chest and hips rise at the same rate. Our lats stay engaged throughout the entire movement. We finish with our hips extending, not our back extending. And they really break down the movements like that, but for every movement that's showing up. They're demonstrating every movement. Then they have time to walk around the class as they're getting warmed up and prepped, and they're able to give those individual specific cues. If we put too much volume in an hour, that cannot happen. And we see that happen very, very commonly. I believe that CrossFit memberships are expensive. You're paying $150 to $200, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less per month. What do you pay for? You don't pay for the equipment. You pay for the community a little bit, but really you pay for the coaching. And that really deep dive into having a skilled coach help you become a more proficient mover. And if the programming doesn't allow for that to happen, your gym members are going to suffer. So that's number one, and to be probably the most important one that we'll talk about here. Number two, we'll very commonly see over-programming of certain movement patterns. So some gyms, the coach is programming, and the coach has a bias towards certain things. We'll see that bias show up in how they approach their programming, where they're always programming, squats 3 days a week, or they're programming Olympic lifting several days a week. And there's certain variables that always show up in that gym. And when you're only programming certain variables, or you're programming certain variables more, you're going to create gaps in somebody's fitness. Now, I do understand at times the way kind of CrossFit programming has progressed, at times now, gyms will spend a period of time focusing on developing one skill set and then transition to something else in the next period. I'm talking about something different here. I'm talking about this isn't planned out. This is just what happens in that gym. And one thing that I really see this happen a lot with is too much vertical pulling. So for instance, I've caught 4 cases of rhabdo in the last couple of years, and all 4 of those cases happened in pull-up workouts where we were doing over 50 pull-ups, and those members weren't prepared for that volume of that movement, ended up dealing with an injury secondary to that. So that's one of the most common ones I look at. And when I'm analyzing programming, if there's one thing I'm always looking for, it's too much vertical pulling, because that happens quite a bit in CrossFit. Next thing I'll look for is the lack of time domain variations. So often gyms will kind of get stuck into programming workouts that are in this like 8 to 12 minute range. And that's where most members are kind of most comfortable. Like, they don't like doing those long, slow workouts that take 20 plus minutes. And those really quick burners, those like Frans and those workouts that are 4 minutes or less, they kind of beat you up a little bit. Like, they mentally to go that hard for that short period of time sometimes is a little rough, and members sometimes don't like that as much. So a lot of times they get stuck in this 8 to 12 minute pattern, which is where most members like most of these workouts to be. And we really want to see more time variation there. We want to see those short burners where we just see how long can you go 100%. We also just want to see how long can you maintain a lower power output for a much extended period of time period. So we got to get out of being in one time domain. Very similar to that, we're going to see a lot of little to no long aerobic work. And so, we won't very often see a CrossFit gym program, let's go run a 5K today, or let's get on the rower and do a 10K. If you go to CrossFit.com, you'll regularly see things like that programmed, but we don't see that in individual gyms. That, I believe, is secondary to the business pull of CrossFit. So if you program, show up and run a 5K, a lot of members aren't going to show up that day. That's a boring workout. They don't want to go run that much. They want to go throw around heavy barbells because everybody wants to lift heavy weights with their friends, as Alan would say. So a lot of times members won't show up, and because of that pressure, a lot of times gyms won't program that way because they feel like they're letting their members down. And that can be tricky. I for sure understand the business thoughts there. One thing that I'd say to do is if you go look at like CrossFit Thoroughbreds programming. So Brian Boucher, who's a TA in the fitness athlete course, a fantastic physical therapist and CrossFit coach. He does some really creative things when it comes to this long aerobic work, where he'll have his athletes go do a light sled push, then go run a 400-meter run, then come in the gym and do a farmer's carry. He'll create this circuit of really low demand exercises that get his members moving for 20 to 30 minutes. We're getting that same aerobic benefit, but he's basically tricking his members into doing that long, slow aerobic work versus just saying, hey, go run for forever, or go row for 30 minutes. So really creative programming there from Brian. Next point is not programming enough volume in their strength work. So a lot of times gyms will program like that. We're going in today and we're going to do 6 sets of 3 deadlifts. And quite often that 6 sets of 3 will turn into 5 sub-maximal sets where we're building up in weight and then go for a 3-rep max. And I fully understand wanting to work up to those heavy loads and the importance of doing that at times. But if we look at the programming of a lot of elite lifters, specifically if you look in the book, The Scientific Principles of Strength, The Science and Practice of Strength Training by Zatsiorsky, they break down the training loads of elite Russian weightlifters back when the USSR was kind of at its peak in weightlifting. And what they found was that the most volume that they trained at was lifting loads between 70 to 85% of their 1-rep max. So lifting some maximal loads, but getting a lot of volume there. So instead of 6 sets of 3 working up to a 3-rep max, they would use 6 sets of 3 where they're sitting at 70 to 85% of that individual's 1-rep max. And they're getting that volume in at these moderate loads where they're consistently working on hitting the right positions, working on bar speed, and not missing reps. And so getting volume in at these moderate loads is what I think more CrossFit athletes need, rather than always going up to a heavy 1, 2, 3 rep max. And so programming that way and setting that mentality, I think, will lead to a little bit better development over time, and then spending periods of time where you go up to that heavy 3-rep max or that heavy single. We don't see a whole lot of unilateral work in CrossFit. And that's kind of a gap that we talk about a lot in our advanced concepts course when we break out their programming. We also don't see a lot of horizontal pulling. So when we're looking at programming accessory work for CrossFitters as a way to kind of help boost their performance or get after some weaknesses, those are two areas that Mitch and I get after quite a bit, is adding in some unilateral work and some horizontal pulling. Next point, not a lot of strict gymnastics work. If you go and look at CrossFit.com's workouts lately, you'll actually see that they've been regularly programming strict pull-ups, strict handstand push-ups, and working on having control of these slower movements so that we can then progress better when we add in kipping to the equation. But we don't see as many of the individual gyms add in that factor where they're programming strict work on the regular. And I think when we develop that slow, strict strength, that's going to really pay off for people and improve their performance when we're talking about adding in kipping. So I'd like to see gyms that put in some strict gymnastics work every now and then. Next point, gyms that program too many hero workouts or too many absolutely soul-crushing workouts. And you don't see this as much as I feel like I used to, at least in the Charlotte area. I don't see it as much, but every now and then I'll look at some gyms programming and they're regularly putting in, 2 hero workouts or 2 of the named workouts, the girl workouts, such as Fran and Annie and those sort of things in the same week. And those named CrossFit female workouts or these hero workouts are ones that are a little bit more intense, or CrossFit athletes kind of just get after a little bit more aggressively. And so if we program those too often, I think sometimes we just end up banging our athletes up a little bit more than is necessary. So that's not always think that we have to crush the souls of our CrossFit athletes. We can get consistently really good workouts. They don't always have to be ones where you are dying every single day of the week. Last point is no rest days. So CrossFitters love CrossFitting, and they don't like going out and doing different activities. But I think if you go back and you read what Greg Glassman describes CrossFit as in 100 words, they kind of end it with regularly learn and play new sports. So we're not trying to just get our fitness up for the sake of having more fitness. We are also trying to get our fitness up so that we can perform better in activities across our entire life. So I think it's important for CrossFit gyms to remember, hey, there's nothing wrong with that Saturday workout turning into, let's all meet at the football field and play flag football. Or let's, instead of going to the gym this Sunday for a workout, let's go for a hike up in the mountains, or hiking a trail, or getting out on the lake and kayaking, and expressing our fitness in different ways, and also taking complete rest days where we can allow the body to rest and recover a little bit more. So there are the 10 most common things I see off in CrossFit programming. I hope it sparks some ideas for you on what to look for when you're analyzing a local gym's programming, or if you're looking for gyms to start referring your patients to, or you're looking for a gym to go to yourself. These are some good things to think about when you go to their website and you start looking at programming around you. Hope everybody has a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.